Before we jump into today's episode, I wanted to remind those healthcare executives out there that are from small and rural healthcare organizations that Capstone provides complimentary consultations. As you may know, we help small and rural healthcare organizations to be the provider and employer of choice to keep care local and margins strong. Go to capstoneleadership.net and you can fill out the contact form there or actually self schedule a day and time that works for you. We'd love to partner with you in executing a winning strategy. Episodic success is a clue that excellence is possible. But systematic success is proof that culture has taken root. That's when excellence becomes who you are as an organization, not just what you occasionally achieve.
Welcome to Culture Change RX, the podcast for healthcare professionals that are committed to creating a thriving workplace culture, improving the experiences of employees and patients, and ultimately unlocking their organization's next level of potential. I'm Sue Tetzlaff, your host and co-founder of Capstone Leadership Solutions. Join me and my insightful guests each week as we share actionable insights for navigating the crucial people side of the business of healthcare. Subscribe now for a weekly dose of Culture Change RX. Now let's dive into this week's conversation where culture change takes center stage.
Welcome back to Culture Change RX, the podcast where we tackle the real, sometimes messy, always important work of transforming culture in healthcare organizations. I'm Sue Tetzlaff, and today we're diving into a pattern I see far too often. It goes something like this. One department, one leader, or one team is absolutely rocking it. Well, usually there's a few, right? We sometimes refer to these as pockets in the organization. They're engaged, they're motivated, they're hitting results, and everyone else is pointing to them as an example. But here's the catch. It's episodic and it's isolated. That success doesn't extend across the rest of the organization. And that's what we're talking about today. The difference between episodic, isolated excellence versus building the kind of culture where all leaders, all teams, all departments, well, most of them are rocking it. Because again, once we get to that side where the majority of teams and leaders and departments are rocking it, then we deal with the pockets where the few, the isolated, where it's not happening. So that's what we want to get to, that excellence isn't isolated in pockets, but that non-excellence is very limited and isolated in pockets. So that's what we're going for through transformation. And then we want to get at that too. So let's set the stage. In many hospitals, or small healthcare organizations that we work with, we'll see that there's a star leader or a standout department or two. Maybe the ED director has rallied her team and patient experience scores are going through the roof. Or maybe the surgery department is buzzing with energy, outperforming benchmarks and growing like crazy. And these are wonderful bright spots, but they're also fragile for the organization, because what's really happening is that success is tied to that one leader, that one team, that department. And the risks, well, first, it creates a single point of failure, that if that team leaves, retires, or burns out, the excellence often leaves with them. Second, it creates imbalance across the organization. Other teams may disengage or even resent the golden child department versus being inspired by them. And then thirdly, it doesn't build momentum because we've got this siloed wind, not a rising tide that's lifting all boats per se. Now let's flip the picture. Imagine a hospital where it's not just one or two teams excelling. It's all or most leaders, departments, and teams that are excelling. So pretty much everywhere you look in the organization, it's aligned, people are engaged, and they're delivering. So what does this look like? Well, leadership behaviors and practices are consistent across the board. There's alignment instead of competition. Best practices aren't guarded in one department or isolated in one department. They're shared and they're spread. And most importantly, results compound. A win in employee engagement also drives a win in patient experience, which drives a win in financial performance. It truly is the difference between having one shining star versus an entire constellation lighting the sky. That's how you know it's not just a great story in one department. It's the DNA of the whole organization. So, what's behind these isolated pockets of excellence? There are a few root causes that pop up time and time again. One of them in particular is that there is no consistent leadership model embraced and adopted by all of the leaders in the organization. So leaders are left to lead however they choose. So those results vary widely. And of course, at the very top of that variation are going to be those leaders that somehow have got it figured out and they're rocking it. But that is not everyone. There is also lack of accountability structures that cross all departments. So there's not a set practice, high standard, and then those accountability structures or mechanisms to assure that those high standards are upheld, that those best practices are happening. Also, reward systems can too often focus on individual wins instead of shared organizational goals or outcomes. We're really an and company. It's really about celebrating individuals and collective team wins and goals. And so if we lean too heavily on the individual wins and don't have organization-wide shared goals and wins, we can end up where we have these isolated pockets of wins versus more global organization-wide wins. And also another root cause may be that there's no mechanism, no formal mechanism to spread what's working. So to really stop and pause and say, wow, that's really working in the ED. Wow, that's really working in surgery. How do we spread that practice to other areas of the organization? So in essence, a great practice stays locked in one unit or department instead of being scaled to the whole organization. So in other words, hospitals and healthcare organizations can accidentally create systems where episodic excellence is the norm and widespread excellence is the exception. So how do you shift from isolated success to an organization-wide culture where everyone is rocking it? Well, there's some things that we've seen work time and time again. It's some of the work that we help do with the healthcare organizations that we partner with for their transformational journey. But one of those is, and I've already mentioned it, adopt a leadership model. So every leader uses the same core practices. In our work with small and rural healthcare organization, that equates to what we call 9 core leadership practices, AKA the leadership bundle. So this leadership bundle creates consistency and predictability. And now we've got all of our leaders set up for success, not just the isolated few. And then we have the systems and the mechanisms to bring and keep that model alive in our leadership group. So we onboard new leaders to it. We continually train, mentor, coach all of our leaders to it. So this model is the driving force of the systems that we have for onboarding and developing leaders continuously. A second thing that's helpful is to create structures for spread. How do we spread those best practices, the things that are working, whether these are things that employees are doing to create safe and satisfying patient care, whether these things that our leaders are doing, whether these are teams that have figured out the best way, the best processes, the best technology to get the best work done. We don't want these successes to have just a small impact. We want to spread them to have a wider positive impact in more areas of our organization. So, monthly leader meetings, best practice showcases, peer mentoring all help to ensure that when one team learns something, all teams can benefit. A popular format that our Capstone partners use is a tactic we call roundtables. So these are small group learning opportunities for those best practices to be showcased. It's a really simple yet powerful way to share what's working. These are very popular. The people that lead these roundtables or participate in them, they're actually fun, they're engaging. It's not a big, long training or meeting or PowerPoint presentation. It's very engaging, interacting in these small group roundtables of sharing. So create structures and mechanisms for spreading these best practices so they get a bigger impact, wide sweeping impact in the organization. And a third tactic I want to share today is all about accountability. So tying recognition, evaluations, and performance discussions, not just to individual progress and wins, but to how leaders and employees contribute to organization-wide consistency and alignment. It was a game changer in my senior leadership experience when our hospital's executive team changed how we evaluated our performance as individuals and then collectively as a team. So no longer was it me as the chief nursing officer being evaluated on my individual behavior and job task performance, but my personal performance evaluation, annual performance evaluation, was highly focused on the shared organizational goals and our progress and achievement towards them as a team. So my individual behavior and performance, yes, it was evaluated, but more importantly, we were evaluated on the progress and the achievement of the shared organizational goals that collectively the entire executive team was responsible for. And then we were able to create a similar model for that at the management level, the middle management level, and then even right down to the staff level where individual behavior performance was evaluated, but goals at the team level, department level, and organization level were a big factor in evaluating how did the last year go and what was my behavior, performance, and contribution to how did the last year go, not just for my job, but for my department, for my team, and for the part we play in the entire organization. So these aren't the be all end all of all of the ways that we can make this move from episodic to systematic success in our organization. But truly, when we do make this shift, when we make this move, the organization becomes agile, it becomes resilient. We don't just have bright spots, but we have a bright organization. So really, here's the big takeaway. Episodic success is a clue that excellence is possible. But systematic success is proof that culture has taken root. That's when excellence becomes who you are as an organization, not just what you occasionally achieve. It's not enough to just have one leader or one department or a few that are rocking it. However, sometimes that is where it starts, right? But it can't stop there. Sometimes that's just the spark. That's the start. But often it stops there. So true transformation happens when every leader, every team, every department is aligned and excelling together. That's when the healthcare organization is strong, it's sustainable, and it's truly positioned as both a provider and employer of choice. So here's my challenge to you as we end today's episode. Look around your organization. Do you see just a few isolated stars, or do you see systems that allow the whole sky to light up? We wish for you a very bright future. We do want your future to be bright, and it can be. And we're cheering you on to much success and hopefully contributing to your efforts through this podcast, Culture Change RX. If this episode sparks ideas for your leadership team, share it with them. And as always, stay connected and tune in each week, every Wednesday, for another episode of Culture Change RX for more insights, tactics, and stories to help your organization shine brightly well into the future. Thanks for listening, and bye for now.
Thanks for tuning in to Culture Change RX. If you found value in today's episode and you are a believer in fostering change in healthcare, join us in making a difference. Follow, rate, and review our podcast on your favorite platform. Share it with colleagues and your network. Together, we can make a lasting impact. Until next week, keep inspiring positive change.